Are you looking for sleeves? Of course you are. You're a Pokemon trading card game player like me. I recently got my hands on the Procyon Gaming dual spec sleeves, and I gotta say, I absolutely love them. I was actually kind of surprised by how much I liked them. So we've now partnered with the Champions Reserve to offer you 15% off of Procyon Gaming's new dual spec sleeves. And maybe saying, Mello, why would you want to pick these ones? Because I think first and foremost, they are indestructible. I had played with the Sentinels, their old formula, and those things just did not ever get nicks on the corners or anything like that. And now I've used the dual specs, and I gotta say, they are also just the most indestructible sleeves that I have seen or used so far. After shuffling up dozens of games hands, they have zero bent corners. They are slightly larger than the Sentinel, so the cards fit in perfectly. And my absolute favorite, they come in boxes of 70, so you don't have a ton of extra sleeves. You have just enough if somehow one of them were to ever break, although boy, you got to be a rough shuffler to do that. So check out the championsreserve.com, use code LAKE15 for 15% off an order of Procyon Gaming dual spec sleeves. All right, let's get back to the show. Yo, and welcome to the 142nd episode of Lake of Rage, a Pokemon Trading Card Game Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kevin Clemente, aka Mellow_Magikarp. I'm joined today by a very special temporary guest host. Joining us for the very first time, we have the one and only Dan Hugar. Dan, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing good. It is so far past my bedtime, but I'm very excited to chat.
I do want to say I was a little surprised when I put out the 8 p.m. Pacific, but you are not in Pacific time, which is what, 11 p.m. for you right now?
10 p.m. I'm in Central, but when you said putting the baby to sleep, I'm like, I can organize around that. That's super reasonable.
Yeah, I appreciate it. For those who don't know, my 18-month-old's going through a sleep regression, so I was like very frantically like, oh please baby, go to bed, go to bed, go to bed. And Dan was incredibly nice of like, yeah, we can go a little bit later if you have to, and we're going ever so slightly later than we already planned. So Dan, I appreciate that so much, because otherwise we're gonna have no episode this week. So you all be sure to thank Dan if you see him at any of the upcoming events, or you have Twitter DM or anything like that, if you enjoy this episode as well. Anyway, we've got a very special one for you today. You probably already noticed from the title of the podcast, we're going to be talking about a little bit how to play the Pokemon trading card game competitively, or get into the competitive side of the Pokemon trading card game when you're maybe a little bit older. I don't know about you, Dan. I'm 32. I'm turning 33 in about a month from now. So, a little older than the average. I played some 16-year-olds in my last League Cup, and got some wisdom out there. But I think for anyone who's listening who is maybe like, oh, I am one of those 16-year-olds who just played Mellow at the last League Cup, I think we got some good stuff in there that you can take away from the training efficiently for your regionals and things like that. Would you agree with that, Dan?
Absolutely.
But first, of course, Dan, I know you from the recent top 8 with Lost Zone Giratina, but you've been playing the game for a little bit longer than that, and you have some other accomplishments. So can you tell us a little bit about your background as a player? Like how long you've been playing? What are some of your accomplishments? That kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am 34, so I'm actually even more aged and wise than you, Kevin. But I started playing a little bit when I was in grad school, and then I started playing competitively in the fall of 2018. And so rather than being a reasonable human being and be like, oh, let's try this out, let's go to maybe a regional, I was like, nope, I'm getting married in July. I'm going to go for my World's Invite immediately afterwards. So I dove all in right after that. And I've been playing for about 5.5 years then. Sucked at first, got better. 2 global 16s for the Players' Cups, 1 and 4, and then top 16 North America. I have gone to 6 events this year, and my worst result is 135th at Charlotte. Otherwise, I've got top 8, top 16, top 32, and 2 top 64s. Got my invite at Portland, and yeah, I became a meme because of Bronzong at one point. But now I'm apparently a bit of a meme because I have a good deck, so I'll take the change.
Yo, that was you? You're the one who got the Centiskorch into the Bronzong?
I am the lucky, lucky man to have been a part of that interaction. Matthew, this is a side note, Matthew Burris was the other one on that, and I played him at Worlds in 2022, and that horrible person brought a Bronzong for me to sign and asked me to sign it before the game. I was both pissed and thought it was hilarious. So
I
Good
absolutely
dude though.
love that. We had Matthew on after the top 8 at LAIC with Gardevoir, and that story came up from the other side. So it's so perfect. I love
Yeah.
it.
And then also with that, so you can see by the lovely orange and everything. So I'm sponsored by Nerd Rage Gaming, awesome store in Buffalo Grove, Chicago, and we have a super super cool event that I'm just gonna plug. Thank you, Kevin.
Please
Let me
do.
do so. Yes, so we have a charity battle, which battle's a strong word, but essentially we're trying to do a drive for the Chicagoland Food Depository because, like, I don't know how much you know about like societal issues like food and food deserts and poverty and like it can be really rough and really hard for people to actually get good food even in a major urban area. So the charity, Greater Chicagoland Food Depository, does a huge thing in making sure they get resources from where there is stuff to where there isn't. So we're doing a drive. We're going to do a battle. It's going to be on Twitch all day on Saturday, starting at 12 p.m. Central. Of the link and stuff, I think if you can put in description and all that.
Hmm.
But it'll essentially we'll have 7 rounds. 7 of the Nerd Rage guys against 7 of the Lost Zone guys. Bunch of different formats: current, standard, post rotation, 2019, 2016, and then we'll have giveaways of at like varying levels of stuff, and then giveaways like personally to people who give decent sized donations. By giveaways, I mean we have close to a case of booster boxes we're giving away. We're giving away like not ancient, but like pre-COVID Cup Championship mats, like Worlds merchandise. Like the goal is to get a lot of money for charities. We got a lot of good stuff to give away, so would love everyone to participate if they can.
Definitely something I would recommend for everyone to check out. It's also, you know, very good players. If you look at the list of names, like there are, in addition to Dan, of course, who has already reeled off some amazing
I'm like the
accomplishments.
ninth best player. It's fine. Like it's gonna be great.
Yeah, so highly recommend everyone check that one out. And if for no other reason, then I mean, you're helping out charity, right? So if you're a Twitch viewer, you're going to help other people find it as well. And maybe some people who would like to donate some money. If you cannot, that's okay, right? You're there viewing, you're checking it out, and maybe some other people will be able to find it and help donate. And, you know, it's a really big issue. It's, without going too much into it, because we are a Pokemon podcast, is a very noble cause. So, Dan, we have some non-Pokemon related questions as well. We have our rapid strike questions coming up here in a second. So you'll have 60 seconds to answer as many of you can with no explanation. I'm currently stalling to pull up my timer. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Perfect. Question number 1. Do you prefer spring or fall?
Fall.
What's your favorite breakfast food?
Breakfast sandwich.
Favorite retro format to play?
I don't really like retro, but Vigor
Favorite deck of all time?
Giratina.
Would you rather go to the bottom of the ocean or go to space?
Space.
Who would be your starter Pokemon?
Decidueye.
Would you rather watch a comedy or a drama?
Comedy.
Toppings on your perfect pizza?
Pepperoni, extra cheese, easy sauce.
What color sleeves do you use?
Mint.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Juniper, sycamore, oak, rowan, magnolia, sada, or turo?
Burrow.
What was your favorite subject in school?
Psychology.
Favorite regional location to go to?
Not Roanoke, Virginia.
What's your favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Mario Brothers or Legend of Zelda?
Legend of Zelda.
And that is time. So you got through 15. That's pretty good.
All right. All right.
I'm a little disappointed that you don't play retro at all.
I really don't. So we'll probably get to this on the topic, but I have a very limited amount of time for Pokemon. So whatever time I have usually goes to like standard or driving for invite or all that kind of stuff. So I don't have a ton of time to go play old things.
I mean, okay, that's a valid excuse, right? That is the topic of the episode.
Yes. Trying to get it on point.
And you said your favorite deck of all time was Giratina. Is that because of the finishes and what it's done for you, or the money it's earned, or is it just actually a fun deck and your favorite to play?
I think I was under pressure in the questions to think one. So I actually love this format.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't happen in best of one because I keep getting my butt whooped in best of one. But like in best of three, it feels like the person that plays better wins
Mhm.
95% of the time. So I definitely haven't won all the time, but I've loved it because I go into every single match being like, all right, if I draw even competently and I play the best I can probably win everything. And I think everyone feels that way about this format, or most people do, because
Mhm.
it is really diverse and it is skill intensive. So for me, having a deck that lets me beat everything and it's all in my hands, whether or not I win or lose, like I've loved it. It's so much fun.
I think that's something that I 100% agree with. And it's always a good thing to get out on the record as people are hating on the format a whole lot, is that's because it's long, not because it's bad. I think
Yeah.
these games are so good. And yes, you can brick and lose, as you mentioned, you experience in best of one.
Hmm.
But so many of the games that I've lost, I've been able to pinpoint, like, well, my play was not clean enough to actually win that game. Like, there were so many things I could have done differently to pull out those victories. And that's not been true of many very recent formats.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then a favorite subject in school, we got to mention this one because you mentioned grad school, but you didn't actually mention anything about it. So, real quick, why psychology?
Well, so that was actually my first grad school. So
Oh,
my little bit of my history, I got my bachelor's in biomedical engineering, master's in material science engineering, and then I just recently graduated with my master's in clinical mental health counseling. So I was a medical device engineer for 10 years, and
mhm.
I'm now a therapist. So always like was a therapist, just did the engineering thing for a while.
Mhm.
So I love it, man. People are the most fascinating thing in the world, and trying to help them get to the good place, it's so much fun. I love it.
You're not wrong. It's how do you put up with being a teacher? And it's like for that exact reason. It's so interesting to get into people's brains. And for me, try and figure out how to teach them. For you, try and figure out how to get them to whatever other goal they might have. I assume that's what that would be.
Yes. I'm literally just trying to break whatever's gotten them to where they are now and help them get somewhere else. It's awesome.
Are you looking for temporal forces, or do you want to go shiny hunting with some Paldean fates? Well, be sure to check out tabletopvillage.com and use code MELLOW5 to get 5% off your order for temporal forces, Paldean fates, or any other product, sleeve, etc. that you are looking for. Not only does it support the podcast and you get some good cards, but you are helping out a family-owned Pokemon first business as well. Again, tabletopvillage.com, code MELLOW and the number 5, MELLOW, and the number 5. Anyway, back to the show. So let's go ahead and get to our main topic for today, which is how to really get into the competitive Pokemon trading card game as an older individual. I had started playing when I was, 27, 28 years old. So I mean, even now, going back at that age, I'm older than most of the people in the League Cup, let alone now that it's been 6 or 7 years. How old were you when you had started playing, Dan?
I was 29. So yeah, I started being competitive when I was 29.
This is definitely something I've seen on like comments on YouTube videos or comments on the podcast or things that people have DM'd me before. Maybe they haven't been to a regional, and okay, I am one of the older podcasters, I guess, technically. And so it's been like a question. And no, you're not too old to play. You're never too old to play. But it's not just you're not too old to play. You're not too old to be competitive. So in my first 2 seasons, pre-baby, right? Those were all things where I was in grad school at the same time of those first 2 seasons. I had been planning a wedding for my second season. In fact, this is a fun fact for the London World or DC Worlds 2019. We had got married in July. I didn't test at all in those first few weeks of August because we were on our honeymoon through going through China and Japan. When we came back for one singular day, I went from Japan to Seattle for one day and then from Seattle to DC for Worlds. So much jet lag, zero testing, and yeah, you still kind of find your way to do what you got to do. So, Dan, can you kind of start us off? How do you maintain being so competitive and having so many great finishes this season as someone who is you're married, you have that full-time job? How are you doing this?
Um, for I'll totally say like a little bit of blessed and lucky to like found good people, and also like I'm kind of good at the game in general, which helps. But for me, the big point is just how am I like it's intentionality. Like how am I intentionally using my time in the
Mhm.
most effective and best way possible? So for me, that's one reason I like Giratina is I've stuck with it this whole year, and that's not intentional per se because I kept trying to find an excuse to not play it. But when I'm going into a tournament, when I'm going into a regional, something like that, like I can't stay up late on Discord and grind at night. Like I can't really spend all weekend like playing and testing and stuff like that. So for me, it's okay. How can I squeeze in real time? So I'll try to. All right, I'm gonna take a quick step back.
Mhm.
I think from a logistics standpoint, all of that of how do I squeeze in time effectively around the things that are the biggest priority. So like you said, family, career, like not gonna skip work to go play Pokemon, not gonna skip time with my wife to go play Pokemon, so I need to kinda schedule in Pokemon around those things.
Mhm.
And so, a big part of that is kind of recognizing, "Okay, what is my skill set? Like, what am I good at? What am I bad at? How do I use my time effectively?" Because, Kevin, I suck at deck building. I'm horrible at it, and I'm terrible at meta calls too.
Mhm.
So for me, I kind of recognize like, okay, those are my two biggest weaknesses. I've tried to improve them, but time is not going to efficiently help me become a better meta caller
Mhm.
or a better deck builder in the 2 weeks before this next regional coming up. So how do I account for that? Well, the thing I can do very well is actually play the game, silly as it sounds. So, how do I then use my time? Well, it's I find a good tier deck, like something that makes sense to me.
Mhm.
I find something that this is what I did with Giratina is, hey, what can beat everything? Like what can just handle everything? So I don't need to try to meta call or pick or hit matchup roulette, especially with thousands of people at these events now.
Yeah.
Like let me find the thing that gives me the chance to play the game every time and then give myself a shot to beat whoever I'm playing. So it became that of how do I account for my weaknesses, grind games then, because then when I'm playing, even if they've played 100 more hours than I have, they probably haven't played 100 more hours with this specific deck
Mhm.
or in this specific matchup. So I can still feel comfortable that I know the deck and what to do almost as well as they do. And then there was something else I was going to say there. Um, Also, just trying to take care of myself in general.
Mhm.
Like, I'm gonna be more competitive if I'm able to function. So, like, am I getting enough sleep at night? Am I prioritizing my health? All that kind of stuff. So, just really focusing and being intentional that I'm using my time effectively.
So let's jump back to the Pokemon one real quick. What are you actually doing, or how are you actually spending that time effectively? Are you going to, say, locals like challenges, cups, and getting those like, okay, these people are going to try hard as much as possible? Are you hitting online tournaments? Are you, DMing a friend to meet up and maybe not late hours of the night, but like, okay, we're going to test this matchup? Are you playing against yourself on a tabletop? Like, there's so many options. What does it actually mean to use that
There
time
are.
intentionally?
So I'm actually super as much as I hate live, I'm actually super grateful for it
Mhm.
because you can use it on your phone.
Yeah.
So when I had started my new job, like I was going to the gym pretty much every morning. So when I'm on the bike or the treadmill or whatever, I'm playing games on live. Like when I'm taking a break at lunch or something, I'll play a game.
Mhm.
Like when I come home or when I'm like on the train or something, I'm constantly reading deck lists on Limitless, stuff like that. So as far as the actual testing time, I'll go to challenges and cups. Usually those are only to try to get CP, but I'll be like bugging everyone, trying to pick everyone's brain, ask questions, learn like, hey, just give me all the information you have available, play the games. Then I only go to locals for nerd rage really,
Mhm.
but this is something I've been doing this year and it's worked really well. But prior to a regional, I'll have people over to our home because we have a home big enough where we can host some people and we'll have 5, 10, 12 people over here for 2 or 3 days at night just to, like, test and grind. And there, I'll stay up later, have people over, and have that focused time.
Mhm.
But even then, it's usually not, "Hey, what deck do I want to play?" It's, "Okay, what are the other decks gonna have? How do I handle this matchup?" That kinda thing.
Okay. Look at that flex that you own a home. Man, you
Well,
just had to throw that out there real quick, didn't you?
listen, I'm married. That is the only possible reason I can own a home.
So I gotta get out to the Midwest. Like, geesh, that's the move right there.
No, the move was getting it before COVID hit. That was the move. Now, I don't know how you even do that, but that is definitely old man conversation if we're talking about old man conversation.
That's true. We should jump back into the Pokemon real quick. So you mentioned live. You mentioned playing live on the treadmill or the bike, which is something that I've actually just recently started doing. Obviously, because live did came out not that long ago, but it's kind of been like, all right, I'm going to do 20 minutes at the start of the gym. I'm going 4 or 5 days a week. It's like, all right, I'm going to be on the treadmill for 20 minutes, and I got to do something. So I've been picking up games for that exact reason. But for me, I hate playing certain decks on live. And so I've kind of gone into the slightly simpler decks. I'm going to say Mew is one of them, but part of that simplicity is because there's a 6 card hand maximum, and that's about as much as you can see on live realistically. Are you
That's fair.
always picking up Giratina? Or are you someone who will also kind of switch off and I'm going to try this other deck and things like that? Or are you just like, no, I'm going to grind Tina because I know I'm playing Tina?
Like I said, I've tried to convince myself to not play Tina before
Mhm.
almost every single event this year, but so I've tried everything. Like it's been Arceus, it's times, it's been Gardevoir, though that one doesn't work on live. Like it's been all of those. Just because that's kind of the general, like, vague time. We're like, "All right, let me just throw stuff at the wall. Let me get a sense of how the deck functions, like, what I can do." Because also, I'm not memorizing my prizes super effectively when I'm on the bike in the morning. So for there, playing something a little simpler is good, and I can just learn the mechanics of it. So that
Mhm.
way I know what to do, how it functions when I'm playing against something. So that's maybe another bit is the time I'm using isn't just for grinding my deck. It's how do I still learn everything about the meta and other decks by playing them when I wouldn't be able to grind my own deck as efficiently. So I'll play Charizard when I'm on the bike because you get a candy for Pidgeot and then you get a candy for Charizard and like just learn the mechanics of the deck and how it functions. So that way when I'm playing against it, even if I don't play it, I'm like, all right, I know this is the line they're going for, how likely it is they're going to find it. Here's the thing I need to do to disrupt that kind of thing.
I think that's really good advice right there of just knowing how the other decks work. One of the things that we talked a little bit before about getting into the game, which we'll talk about later, but I'd first hired a coach, and one of the first things I don't know what the first things, at some point early on, one of the things he said was you want to do whatever makes your opponent the most uncomfortable. And one of the easiest ways to figure out what that is by playing those decks and realizing like, oh, you have 5 or 6 energies committed as Charizard. Like you're actually not in a comfortable board position when you have that much going on. It's like, okay, well, suddenly now, okay, a boss stall is potentially a win. There's like other stuff that you're not going to think of unless you play Charizard and you recognize your opponent's win conditions. You're like, oh no, like, are they going to see this? And of course they don't. But once you play the Charizard matchups, right, and you're like, oh no, I'm in a really fragile spot right now, and your opponent's looking at your board and they're like, oh my gosh, I just lose. And so playing those other decks really lets you identify those, not just boss stalling, but those other types of things that are going to be a little less obvious if you're just looking at a board state.
Well, and so one of the local guys, he said this, and I actually disputed on it. He said, like, yeah, my friend said, like, once you start looking for deck out as a win condition, you've already lost. And I was like, no, no, not at all. Like, that's something I think is really
Mm-hmm.
valuable. And it's part of both winning and kind of being an old man playing is I don't always have to win the way I think I'm supposed to. Like, I can win a ton of different ways. And the way that's helped me be effective is I'm always trying to look for those. Like, I try
Mm-hmm.
not to tunnel vision onto stuff. So, I've beaten Charizard more than a few times by deck out
Mm-hmm.
because, like you said, they run out of energy, or I see them research away their rope, and I'm like, huh, I'm no way going to take 6 prizes before they do, but maybe I can do this. So, keeping an eye out for that. And part of that, just kind of to spin off there, is that deck knowledge, not just of how to play it, but what the lists are, what the content is. So, another way I've tried to be effective is I just read and listen to so much and everything. I listen to your pod every week. It's great. Thanks for having me on. So whenever I'm on the way to like work, driving home, doing whatever, I'll listen to podcasts, listen to YouTube videos. Do not watch the YouTube videos in the car, but I will listen to them. Like
Thank
just
you. My
try to
lawyers would have
download
been
all the
upset if you didn't mention
yes.
that one.
My wife would also be. So I try to just download all that information into my brain so that way that's time I'm not doing anything like really functional or effective anyway.
Mhm.
So just how can I fill in all those gaps with stuff that helps me out in the future? So when I'm playing against someone and I see that 6 energy come down and I see that second rod go away, I'm like, there's a very high percentage that they don't have another energy and I can win via that, even if I'm down 5 prizes to 1 or whatever it may be.
Mhm. That's true of every deck too. It's not just Charizard, right? Anyone listening to this
Right.
can. I'm going to mention it because Dan, you are the Giratina player. But something that I figured out when my attempts to play Giratina, but I'm a bad Giratina player, is they can cook themselves out of the game so aggressively. And that's another one, right? Where me trying Giratina, and it's not for me. I'm not going to touch that deck for a regional anytime soon because I am losing so many times by like, oh, I don't have enough energy to win. But by doing that with myself and sticking those games out, I've won more games than I'd like to admit by just letting my opponent play the game and being like, oh, you're you're doomed. Like turn 3, you double Mirage Gate to your Greninja to KO my Charmander's. Like there's one in the lost zone and there's a super odd in the lost zone. Like, I'm gonna let you see what happens here, right? And then pulling it out. So
Hmm.
yeah, it is just so valuable. And the content part is also, I think sometimes you get people who are like, oh, it's an information overload. But and Dan, you can kind of tell me if I'm wrong on this one because I also listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff like that. But you have so many differing opinions that you kind of start to recognize who is right more often and who is incorrect more often. And not everyone is saying the same things all the time. And some people go in between, myself included, can go in between the right and wrong depending on how hard they're trying at any given time. And that is actually really valuable information because then you get those different tiers of people, right? You get the like, okay,
Mhm.
this podcast is going to have someone like in Azul who's is probably going to be right on most meta calls or whatever. But that doesn't mean that everything he's saying is correct because then there's going to be people who are lower down, myself in that one, who think a certain thing. And so they're going to tech in a different way than whatever he's going to say because like, no, Mew is big. I'm going to play my Spiritombs. And then suddenly like, okay, the average player is going to be doing this thing. And so there's like information overload. But once you can kind of identify those different levels, you're like, okay, this is what people are thinking, not necessarily if they're right. I don't know if you have noticed that as well.
Yeah, that's actually I don't think I've ever really thought about who is right and who is wrong more
Mhm.
often. I do remember you talking about Palkia though, so I'm just gonna fling that out there in case you
All
remember
right,
that at all.
I'm going to delete that episode from existence. For anyone who is not into the deep cut, we did say Hisuian Samurott V-Star. Yeah, V-Star was going to be
Yeah.
so much better than Palkia. So, oopsies.
To be fair, I'm also the one that said, "I don't think Mew's gonna be as good as everyone says it is." Like, there's not enough pieces there, so I you're not alone.
You were smart enough not to record yourself saying that, to be fair.
Correct. That's my one win here. So, but to your point, I don't think it's ever been so much like who's right, who is wrong, but it has been a you find trends in data. So,
Mhm.
like by listening to a bunch of different podcasts, watching a bunch of different videos, looking at 10 different Charizard deck lists, just to stick with that example,
Yeah.
like I it doesn't tell me whether or not my opponent will have 8, 9, 7 energy in their deck. But if I know that, hey, this is typically what people do, here's the reasons why they do or do not, I can also start to identify if they're making a certain play, it's because they have this content, like this stuff in their deck. Or
Mhm.
as far as meta calling goes, if I hear four people talking about Mew being the best deck in format and the perfect play, and I hear four people saying no one should play it, it's horrible. For me, that tells me absolutely nothing except for to say, like, I don't know. And like saying
Mhm.
I don't know is actually a really, really good thing to know because then that means if I'm making a decision on playing a certain deck, I probably shouldn't use that as data. Like, I probably shouldn't make that choice based on what I think Mew will be because there's no confirmation.
Mhm.
But if it's do I include Spiritomb or something, then I can say, all right, I'm making an informed decision of do I like attack aggressively, put that Spiritomb in, or do I say, you know what, like it's high variance enough, I'm just going to make my deck more consistent. So to me, it's that kind of stuff of looking for the key pieces and the trends throughout it all. That's what help guides decisions.
That makes perfect sense. Do you have anything else for anyone who is trying to balance? You want to actually, that's not true. You do, and I want you to elaborate on it. You mentioned the taking care of yourself part of it. This is something that you probably know too. You have friends who don't do any of this stuff. Pokemon players are terrible at, which I love you be all because that means you're available to do my podcast at any hour of the night. But Dan, can you elaborate on some of the ways that you can really improve your play by taking care of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is a social one and a physical one and a mental one. So
Mhm.
from a mental one, you've mentioned this before and I totally agree with it. Like I think you said the day before an event, you just don't test.
Mhm.
Like you just don't play because you're not going to gain any more information that way. So just use your time in the right way. And I think that's something good to apply across the board. Like don't feel that you need to grind the deck every night for 2 weeks leading up to the event. That doesn't mean you'll do better. Like it's okay to take a step back and
Mhm.
look at what could actually help you. So mentally, taking some of that pressure off. For me, a huge part of it is being process oriented, not results oriented. So if I'm locked in on, I have to get day two, like day two is the only thing that matters. There's nothing I can do to control whether or not I hit the right matchups or
Mhm.
my deck functions or anything like that. So I can't control if I go 6-2-1. What I can control is have I prepared? Have I tacked as best as I can? Have I practiced? And then also part of that control is am I getting like 6 to 8 to 9 hours of sleep each night?
Mhm.
Am I eating vegetables and protein and carbs like throughout the day leading up to the event? Am I staying hydrated? Am I sleeping in a reasonable like bed or surface where I can actually get some rest? And then from a social standpoint, like I think there's good ways to build friendships, build relationships, and have that help you feel like emotionally and mentally healthy. Talking to friends about like the game and stuff like that. Then the other part is knowing when you need to disconnect, like knowing when to give yourself a break, both before the tournament, like when you're trying to prepare for it. So, like I mentioned, I'll do like a boot camp at my place for a couple days before the event, but it won't be the day before. It'll be like Tuesday, Wednesday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday or Friday, it's a okay. We need to like not have tons of social time right now. Like I
Mhm.
just need to like chill and rest. And then during the day, if I have a loss and I misplay and I'm pissed about it, I will go not like talk to anyone about it. I'll just go listen to my music, like let myself settle and then come back. So it's again, it's all intentionality. It's all mindfulness. It's all awareness. Like, are you paying attention to what you physically need, mentally need, emotionally need? Like both coming up to the tournament, and then at the tournament, having carbs, having protein, having water, like having space, like getting sleep, all that kind of stuff.
Can we go back to that process oriented versus results oriented? Because
Yeah.
A, I agree as the like the upfront. That is a great way to go about it. But then B, if you're listening to you say that, it's a very easy thing to say, well, of course you're going to say that. Your results are incredible. So, what would you say to those people who are maybe like, okay, process oriented sounds great, but I'm not getting the results that I want. So, so it's like, this isn't as good for me. Like, what would you say to those individuals?
I would say that Kevin would not have been excited to have me on the podcast 8 months ago. Like, it takes time to get there, and that's the whole point of the process thing is honestly, this is something from a therapist I work on with people all the time, is disconnecting who you are, your value, whatever, from those results. Because if you can focus on what you actually control, regardless of whether or not you get a top 8, top 16, whatever it may be, you will go to the tournament happier, you will have more fun at the tournament, and you will leave the tournament happier every single time. And surprisingly enough, and I'm sure you've all seen this, when you are happy, you tend to make better decisions and you tend to have more fun and you tend to play better when you're feeling good or in a good mood. So for me, part of that is I sucked for a while, but I was trying to constantly get better and trying to constantly improve. So for me, I could go to an event and brick 3 games, win the 3 I don't brick. And when I bricked, I still played optimally, just didn't hit it. I can be frustrated, but I can also say, okay, did I do everything I could have that was in my control? Sometimes the answer is yes. Other times it's in the moment, yes, but I didn't meta call well, or I didn't practice this deck list well enough, or I didn't think through these matchups well enough. Okay. Because then when you know that, then that's the way you get better. Is it's not just even feeling better in the moment, but when you say, well, how do I improve? How do I keep growing? You grow by being able to identify the areas where you're struggling. So that process oriented, you only do that if you focus on the process. Because if it's on the results and like, hey, I got top 8 in San Antonio, woo, go Dan. Like I messed up a ton throughout that day. I made a ton of mistakes, and sometimes they punished me, sometimes they didn't. But if it was just results oriented, I could say I played perfectly, but I didn't. And that means I'm going to do worse overall. Like we're going to regress to the mean, and the mean's going to be worse if I don't consistently try to get better. So I think I may have rambled there, but did that answer the question?
That did. That was a really great, like, a really great thing of just even if the results are good, the process is the important part in order to actually get where you need to go. I also really
Exactly.
liked you mentioned a little bit about like, okay, well, I played optimally, and then 3 games you break, 3 games you don't. But was the list correct? Was the meta call correct? Stuff like that. And that's one that I don't hear enough people mention. In fact, I hear the opposite. You scroll through Twitter too. You see list was perfect, flawless, random tech card was the best card in the whole deck, right? And despite that, it's like,
Mhm.
well, I went 5-3-1 or something like that, which I've been 5-3-1 at several regionals. That's that's definitely a record that people have. That's not even 5-8-9, that is 9 rounds. And you have to kind of look back and be like, did I do that well? Was this card that good? Was the deck that good? Like, even if the meta call is irrelevant, like right now, I would lean towards meta calls are mostly irrelevant unless you're a Mew player trying to dodge the Spiritombs or something like that. Otherwise,
Mhm.
most things are pretty 50-50. There are cards in your deck. Are they doing what they are supposed to do? Did you pick the right things? Did you pick the consistency? Did you add a random tech in there? So maybe you're like, oh, I bricked, right? I bricked, but I played well. I
Mhm.
hate this format. Like, well, did you cut to 3 VIP pass and 3 level ball and Guardy? when you could have kept it 4-4 or whatever, some example
Mhm.
like that, right? Is you're doing that, then maybe that is where that issue comes back into. And that's part of that process of, did I get enough reps with this, cutting a VIP pass to see if it still worked? Or did I do it the night before because it felt okay? Because VIP
Mhm.
pass isn't that good, right? So those types of things are they're pretty relevant.
Well, so an example on that, because I always think of Manaphy, because I freaking hate that card.
Me
Like, I
too.
never want to play it in
Yeah.
Giratina. Yes. So I didn't play Manaphy except for like one tournament this year. And in Peoria, I didn't play Manaphy, and I hit 7 or 8 decks that play Comfy. No, I hit 7 decks that play Comfy and at least 1 or 2 Rapid Strike decks. And like
I'm
my
going to
record
assume that
ended up,
Comfy decks had water energies with the Greninja, right? Because spinning
oh,
attack
yeah,
ain't sniping
all
you.
of them.
Okay.
No, that
Perfect.
is true. All of them did. So like, I went 9-3-3 on the day.
Mhm.
And so for me, if I look at that, like, I could have Manaphy would have been hugely helpful there. But it meant that I would have skipped a consistency card, and I could have skipped something that helped me play the game. So Portland, for example, I played multiple mirrors where they played both Manaphy and Jirachi, and I played neither. And that is horrendous, and I beat every single one of them because they got Manaphy and Jirachi down, but they had less gust than I had, or
Mhm.
they had less switching outs or healing outs than I had. So for me, it was, I'm going to make my deck a better deck in general, because even if I'm at a disadvantage, I'm going to have trust that I'm going to be able to make good enough decisions to play around that disadvantage. And that's actually something I've talked about with other people. If you're really scared of or struggling with the matchup, it is totally okay to give yourself not a handicap, but a boost there and
Mhm.
say, I'm going to decrease the power of my deck a little bit to swing this matchup because I don't know if I'm as comfortable winning there. And for me with Giratina, what I've said is aside from maybe Mew, I feel comfortable that I can beat pretty much everything. So I'm just going to play my deck as the best deck I can and figure something out when I get to that situation. But sometimes that punishes you when you have 2 win-ins for top 8 and you hit Greninja both times and they just absolutely hit it. Okay, well, then
Mhm.
that's on me. But then in San Antonio, I don't play Manaphy and I play a couple mirrors and I don't lose any of them. Like to me, that says, okay, the tech can matter and the prep can matter. Sometimes there's variance, sometimes there's not, but that planning coming into it can make a difference on your result.
Oh, for sure. Would you say there's a difference between the way you played between the two regionals? Because you're winning without Manaphy. How, like, is it the way you approach the matchup? Is it, do you think the format changed enough? Like, how is there a difference between those two tournaments?
I did not play 7 comfy decks in San Antonio, which is legitimately a big part of it. I
Yeah.
did hit
Okay.
a couple better matchups, which definitely helps. And absolutely, I played better. Like for me, we've talked about this. I can't put the same amount of time in every week or every day that other people do, especially
Mhm.
when you're in like high school, college, less responsibilities. So part of my motivation for sticking with one deck, if it's still a good call, is that all those hours accumulate. Like this all adds up. So that time in Pittsburgh and Peoria, whatever it may be, those are all very good hours for testing and improving. So now I'm gonna have a way better chance to succeed with Giratina compared to almost any other deck in the format. So there's more value in just playing Giratina when my play is gonna be better and better and better as the format goes on.
It's perfect. That makes a lot of sense. This podcast is sponsored by TC Evolutions. TC Evolutions offers the finest quality crafted damage counters, ability use markers, and V-Star markers out there. So if you're looking to beat your opponents in style, be sure to check out tcevolutions.com and use code LAKE10 for 10% off your order. Anyway, back to the show. The last little bit that we had wanted to mention was kind of starting into the competitive scene a little later in life, which looking back, maybe that should have been where we started, but who cares? We both started, let's say, a little later in life. I know there's going to be people listening to this. There's plenty of parents who listen with their children who are like, yo, y'all are still babies. But when you're playing at a tournament where the average age, really, regionals feels like it's 19, even though that's nowhere near true. It's way above that. When you're playing against so many people who are, high school, college age, and you go to a league and it's a lot of juniors and seniors and things like that. How did you get into the game? How did you actually like jump into the, okay, I am going to play this? Like, what are some tips you have? How did you do it? That stuff.
Yes. So I hated my job so much. Like I was kind of miserable at it. So I'm like, you know what? I need something fun and positive to be able to like feel better every day. So I'm like, you know what? I like playing Pokemon in grad school. Like, why don't I just start doing that again? So I started going to like leagues and stuff like that. And I just talk to people. Like, I'd sit down, I'd play, I'd ask people their name,
Mhm.
I'd talk about the deck or the game that's happening. And like eventually kind of by so there's studies that have shown that to build relationships, you need proximity, time, and common interests. So by just going there, talking and spending time with people, like I started to build those relationships and started to like be able to play with more people and learn more things and join conversations. So by the time like July, August rolled around, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this competitive thing. I had the barest sense of like what it took to do well. And I got top 8 at my very first cup.
Mhm.
Then I didn't get top 8 at a cup for a long time because it took a while for me to like have those lessons continue once formats change and once stuff like that's changed. So for me, it was kind of diving in headlong and
Mhm.
diving in headlong both in spending time doing and playing at leagues and at cups and stuff, and also diving into knowledge gaining. So I subscribed to every article site I could find. I listened to every YouTube video, every podcast I could find, whatever it may be. And kind of like you said, I didn't get coaching until my second year because I tried to go for my Worlds invite my first year, just like cold, like, "Let's do it,"
Mhm.
and I was nowhere near getting it because I didn't know anything. I had been playing for, like, 4 months, and since I didn't have the time to go all in, and as much as I'd like to say I'm a good player, I'm not that good of a player, so it took me a little more time to get there. So
Mhm.
then I got coaching, and that helped kind of accelerate everything. So I'm rambling again because it's late, but essentially putting the time and dedicated focus to actually get better, that was the biggest thing. Is just
Mhm.
I said I'm going to set a goal to improve, and my whole goal was I want to go from being bad to being good at this game. So, all that. And then one thing I want to add too that helped me get into it, and because this is kind of a hard thing to do at times, almost every single round I play, I always ask my opponent afterwards, what could I have done differently?
Mhm.
Like, what did you see that could have been a better move? Or kind of like you said, what is the thing that you were really glad I did instead of doing something else?
Mhm.
And just try to every single match, try to get as much information from it as possible. Cause yeah, maybe I bricked, but I bricked and I countered catchered to stall, but I should have just taken the prize or sacked the prize and saved the counter catcher for more impactful play later or something like that. So how like I tried very hard to get every single decision to be optimal and learn whatever I did whenever I did something that was suboptimal.
That makes sense. One thing you mentioned was the what studies for what helps to build relationships. What were those things again? It was proximity,
So
time.
it was proximity, time, and common interests.
Okay. So I think those are also really good things to kind of reiterate because like you, when you're jumping into the game because it's like, well, I want something fun. I moved to a new place where I had my wife, I had one friend from college who happened to also live here and no one else. And you're like, well,
Yeah.
okay, I like being competitive. That was also a big part of it. But I was like, I don't know anyone here. And those first few challenges, cups, whatever I'd gone to, just like, okay, I'm just meeting new people. And it still kind of felt a little bit off. And something that I think everyone should know, even if you know it, right, is once you are there and seeing the same people and you're all playing Pokemon together, it does get a little bit better and a little bit easier to continue to go to the tournaments and things like that. And then doing well is also that encouragement of I'm competitive. I need to do or else I would have dropped this game so quickly. But
Yes.
the going does actually get better and better kind of every time you're going to these local tournaments and seeing the same people and all that other stuff.
Like, I like, making friends as an adult is hard too, by the way. If you're an adult and don't already know this, it's hard to make friends as an adult
Or if
because you
you're
don't
not an adult, get ready.
yeah, for sure, prepared emotionally, spiritually, whatever. Because, like, kinda like you know, Kevin, when you're at college, like, you have all your friends around, or even if not your friends, you have all these
Yeah.
kids around, and everyone's in, like, similar majors, you all have the same schedule, stuff like that. When you're an adult, you don't have that every day. You go to work, and everyone's a wide range of ages, and even if they have the same profession, it's a wide range of interests. So, going to, like, tournaments I remember Emery, was a guy I met at, like, my first league, and I tried to, like, get him to be friends with me, and he had no desire to be friends with me. I'm like, "Alright, cool. This is fine. This is fine."
Mhm.
And, like, I'm friends with Emery now. But I remember kind of feeling shot down, like, "You know what, dude? You're trying to meet a whole new group of people and build a whole new set of relationships. You know this is going to take some time. So give yourself some patience on it because it does take time to get there. And there's no like in 3 months you'll have four friendships. It literally just takes like happenstance for it to happen.
Oh yeah, it really is just it keeps happening. Like you're still there, you're still going, and then suddenly something clicks, maybe something new clicks that you weren't expecting, like, oh, you're both Mariners fans or whatever people outside of Seattle root for. And suddenly it's like, oh, these are like these other cool things that are happening, or like, oh, you're playing a really cool deck that I was not expecting, or you have a cool tech in there, and then you suddenly start talking about like, yo, what's the second Manaphy doing in your Lost Zone deck, or something like that. And those little things can kind of help to bridge that gap, and then that is pretty important for playing the Pokemon trading card game, is having those friends, because you mentioned a little bit earlier about going to events, and just there's so much other stuff that happens beyond playing the game. And
Mm.
as someone who only had success for a while going to regionals, into suddenly I had a baby and he's great and I love him. But then I started to go to regionals and not have success because the amount of play testing time I had was next to nothing. And the very first one was like, it was so terrible. And I was like, I flew here and I bricked so hard. And then I didn't know how to I didn't know what to do after I bricked. And because I hadn't played enough games where things went bad. And I was like, this was terrible and I hate it and it's stupid and I'm done with this game forever. And then I was like, wait, no, I can hang out with my friends. I can do this other stuff. Right. And that just makes the experiences so much better. If you're as competitive as I am, at least, where it's kind of win or go home for the most part.
See, I got day 2 at my second regional
Mhm.
ever. And I was
Nice.
super hyped about it. It was awesome. I did horribly in day 2, and then I didn't make it day 2 until Worlds in 2022 because, that's the thing is I wasn't that good when I started playing,
Mhm.
so I just got my butt whooped all the time, but I would do just well enough to be close, and it was enough to get my invite in my second season,
Mhm.
and then I go to Worlds, and I get day 2. But like you said too about the relationship building, like that's also how you get better. Is you
Mhm.
make those friends who can give you that information, who can test with you or can share results of their testing and you can go back and forth and it all kind of snowballs to get you a point where you look back and a couple years go by and you're like, wow, I have a network of people from a competitive standpoint. I have people who will give me advice and answer questions for me and help me with stuff. I have friends I enjoy spending time with. And now my Pokemon time can also be my social time.
Mhm.
And suddenly I have more time for both of those. And just overall, you're like, wow, I can actually do well at this. And I can have fun while I do well at this.
Do you have any other advice that you'd like to throw out there for anyone who is trying to get into the game competitively, maybe who hasn't been playing for their whole life, as a lot of the juniors and seniors get to?
So don't be afraid to ask questions.
Mhm.
Like I've kind of said it a bunch, but like I sucked when I first started, and I still am not anywhere near like a top tier player or anything like that. Like, so don't be afraid to be bad. Like, you're not going to get good at a deck if you don't play it and lose 4 of your first 5 games. Like, you're not going to get good at a type of archetype if you don't fumble around for a little bit on it. Like, be okay and like have the humility to ask when you get your butt whooped by somebody, hey, why did that go so easily for you? And how did I put up no resistance whatsoever? Like, what do I do? What do I do differently? How do I see this? Get coaching. Just be willing to be bad because you're not going to get better unless you accept that you're bad in certain ways,
Mhm.
to put it in like super not diplomatic terms.
Yeah. And the ask questions too. So asking your opponents, especially at locals, if you're up against someone who's is a better player, right? Of like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Is great. Definitely something to you should always be doing, assuming there's not some people are saltier after they lose than others, read the room sometimes.
Pick your moments.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's not, especially if you lose, almost everyone who beats you will happily tell you where things could have gotten better and be open
Yes.
to what they say, because I've had people ask me before and then they're like, oh, what if I did this? And I was like, no, that's a terrible play, because then this whole game snowballs incredibly differently. Like, this would have been a correct line. And then they're kind of like, no, I think the other line, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to beat you again next time, because clearly you're not open to learning from this.
Yeah.
But
One one
please.
one thing I'll just add on there too, and this is less of a advice and kind of more of a directive on my end. Also, be the kind of person that makes people want to talk to you. So, building the network from a personal standpoint, like asking questions, building those finance support's awesome. But also, like this is a fun community.
Mhm.
We're slinging shiny cardboard at each other. Like it's supposed to be fun. So I think it's really, really important for all of us. And this is something I've tried to like preach and push in Nerd Rage and everywhere else I've gone is be welcoming and kind. And if that new 20 something person walks in and they
Mhm.
look like they know no one or know nothing of what's going on, ask them what deck they're playing. Ask them like what they've had fun playing. And it could be that they brought a theme deck and you're going to 6-0 them in the first round, but that is okay
Mhm.
because if you're nice to them, if you welcome them in, they may come coming back and they may get really good. And then you may have a good resource there too. And the community is just better and stronger and more competitive. And it's more fun and you all will succeed more. So I think it's really important to also welcome in people since we all get better when we all get better. So build those relationships, help it be a fun place for people to come in and play.
You also have those occasional, like the people who bring the just weirdest creations of all time. And these are the type of people that are also really good to hang out with because they are so much more creative than all of, well, maybe not all of us. Some of you are those people. Congratulations. You're more creative than it. I assume Dan and definitely
Oh, yeah.
myself. And
Yes.
this also like the type of thing where like, okay, these are fun people to be around, but you get to hear their ideas and you're like, oh my gosh, like your brain works so differently. And maybe that's the teacher in me where it's just so fascinating to listen to some people who it's like, okay, yeah, you're going 1-4 with your janky creation, but it's like, but like, what, how, what did you come up with? How did you get to this conclusion? Like, it's so interesting to hear the game through other perspectives as well. And as a Pokemon nerd, I love to hear that type of stuff. So definitely, being welcoming can open up to just like, oh wow, you're seeing the game so differently, and it helps me see the game so differently. And sometimes you can work together on that person and be like, well, how can we make your Venomoth deck better, right? And it's just fun for everyone involved at that point because it's like, okay, yeah, I won in 3 minutes because the Venomoth deck sucked, but let's see if we can work this out. Like, let's see if we can shop this, and maybe next week you'll be making Top Cut with it or something like that, right?
So to kind of spin off that, I think that's something that people don't realize is like, oh, it's a meme deck. Oh, it's a stinky deck. Well, kind of like you said, typically, except for Alex Shemansky, like typically people who are like top tier players, like they don't play those weird decks. They only play either a top tier deck or something that's clearly derived from it that's like a good meta call or
Mhm.
your Tord. But like the people who make those decks usually aren't the same caliber of player as the top players who get results. But if you put like someone on stream in Nerd Rage had a Dodrio Zatu deck with the not Moonlit Hill, but the old cemetery that does damage.
Mhm.
And so you had an onboard draw engine that could draw you 6 or 7 cards per turn. You built your own attackers with a single energy attachment, and you were able to play counter catcher and all of that. And there's nothing to shut all of your abilities off. Like conceptually, that's actually really awesome. And I love this guy. He's gotten much better since I've known him,
Mhm.
but he didn't play it super well on stream. But I'm looking at this and I'm like, dude, if you gave John Ang or someone like that deck, they could probably run over a lot of people with it. So I think just because a deck isn't doing well, like there's the deck building part of skill set, and then there's a playing part of skill set. I will never build a good deck. Maybe someone
Same.
who's an incredible deck builder can't play it super well. So if you find people who have that skill set, you may find an idea that is just kind of ready made, like, hey, here, take this. And you can day two with it because you'll be able to use it effectively because you like worked with them to get it to work.
And there's so many deck builders who are well aware that they're not the ultimate pilot, but that's not their goal. They want to see their creation doing well. And so it really is that mutualistic relationship, and why, again, just the welcoming of everyone is such a big deal. And if you're listening to this, it sounds like Dan and I have about the same skill set of I'm going to play cards and I'm going to play them well and hope it works. And that ends there, right?
Correct.
But
Yes.
the flip side of people who aren't either of us are just like, oh, I can make these really cool ideas and I can make them kind of work, but they don't do much of anything. And, maybe you reach out to that player like myself who it's like, all right, this dude plays meta every single time. That doesn't mean I'm not open. I really like Pokemon trading card game. Dan, I'm assuming you really like the Pokemon trading card game too.
Love this game.
So it's really fun to talk about that stuff. Like any chance they can get of like, all right, did you see a side tangent? But whatever. Did you see the Steelix Dodrio deck on stream for
Yes.
Utrecht?
So cool.
It was so sick. I loved the old Spiritomb, and it's like, oh my gosh, this deck is everything I want in a deck. Like the Steelix hits hard, the Dodrio draws cards and does more damage as the game goes on, and Still, one of my proudest moments was being one of the first people to play the Spirit Tomb, right? The very first regional when it dropped. And I remember playing at Zap Beasts, and it was just that I did terribly at that regional because I hit so many Vileplume decks. But I remember every single round, bench the Spiritomb, my opponent, they didn't know what it did. No, everyone read it, including shout out to Alex Shemansky. Like, these are good players who are like, what the heck is this thing? Doing number, like counting on their fingers and being like, oh no. And then Guzmaing it up like the next turn or two after it's been building up some damage, right? Like that stuff feels so feels so good. So I'm like, oh man, I really want to play. I'm not going to play that deck, but I want to play that deck, right? Because Vancouver's too close. Sorry, I gotta play meta, but that stuff, I love it so much. It's so cool.
Absolutely.
Dan, if the people want more from you, where can they find you?
I am at Dan the Trainer 25 on Twitter. So feel free to DM me, follow me, whatever there. Like I said, Nerd Rage sponsors me. Hooray, Nerd Rage. We do locals every Thursday, and we actually stream locals every Thursday. And we'll be streaming, obviously, the big event on Saturday, and we'll do all our cups too. I'm usually the one commentating on stream because I love it. So would love to have people chime in or come watch. And also, kind of like that improvement thing. If there's anything you want to see or that we could be doing better, whatever, like tell me. I want to improve. Have it be the best thing we can be.
Myself, you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube at Mellow_Magikarp. Be sure to rate and review the show. Follow it on the Twitters at Lake of Rage Pod. This has been another episode of the Lake of Rage podcast. We'll catch you all next week.